shortly after, about 6-8 months later, the Inspire came out, and we started using the Inspire, and that's been our workhorse for the last several years. Remember, I said I went to my council, and I had about this many use cases that I went to, kind of like LAFD just came out with, I guess, their policy the other day, if anybody noticed that. And a lot of their policy was, here's when we're going to use the aircraft. And we immediately had buy-in from our council. We'd already gone to city administration, and they were fully supporting it. We went from those few to these. And this isn't even a full list. These are actual incidents that we have flown. A lot of them we fly sometimes daily, sometimes multiple times a day, weekly at least. And I'm not going to go through them all, but 360 size up on a fire, obviously wildland fire, knowing where my crews are and where they're operating and they're safe is huge. So that safety, I'm going to keep pounding that safety theme in there because for us, that's what this tool is. I could just, we'll show the water rescue we've used it on, accident investigations, crime scene investigations. These are more of the more recent ones where we're getting better at being able to help with that. And our team that we'll talk about has even been working on several homicides recently, helping law enforcement. In fact, Garrett was just on the phone a little bit ago with one of the district attorneys working through getting that, them being able to use that technology. So, again, 2011 wildfires. For me, wildland fire, when I pull up on an incident, sometimes what I call the 2D version. So this is my ground level. I don't know where the fire is. I don't know where it's going. I don't know what's in front of it. I don't know where my crews are. Again, what's in front of the fire, I don't know the terrain issues. There is all these issues that we have. And I fell into this trap in February, a command trap, not just a UAS. I pulled up and I was worried about the fire I could see. There was a fire I could see. It was a wildland fire. And that was my focus, and that took my focus. Luckily, I had my Inspire 1. I put it in the air, and as I started to do my 360 scout we do, I started yawing the aircraft around, and I found something that I'd never dealt with before. From the point of origin, I had one head that had come around the property to where I was at. That was what I was concerned with. Had I not put my aircraft in the air, I would not have known about the other head that had U-shaped around, and the terrain sloped. So I was in an island. I was in actually a somewhat blackened area, so I was in a safe zone, but it had gone around, and by the time I had gotten my aircraft in the air, it had jumped a road and had 3 houses threatened. And I know for a fact I would have either had damaged or lost houses had I not put my aircraft in the air on that. Now this is the view we get on a wildland fire. Now I can get terrain, I can see where the fire's at, where it's going. All those questions get answered immediately once I get in the air. The other part to this is getting this information back to command and control, back to the incident commander. Transition to water rescues. This was actually our second water rescue of the morning. I'm a water rescue technician, and I was on the engine responding to this one and one previously. This is one of those, when you go through water rescue school, Swift Water Rescue School, I always call those our sterile environments, kind of like our burn buildings for training fires. It's a sterile environment, and that I can go in and I can learn. I don't have furniture in my way. It's controlled environment on the water rescue side for where I was learning. It doesn't prepare you for this. There's no shoreline to put firefighters or rescue personnel on the opposite side to run lines across. I can't get a crew over there. We had to go to boats, and our challenge immediately was to get a line to this house to start working the boat. Garrett had just 2 weeks before come up with an idea that has since developed into the Stork system. And took his Inspire 1. It was one of those, I immediately knew I needed this. Step off the engine and tell Garrett I need the line across. For the firefighters in the room, these guys aren't near the shoreline. So anybody that wants to go, why don't they have gear on? They're not near the shoreline. It slopes down, it's deceptive. So they're actually on road surface, and there's Garrett there. He flew the tagline across. We were in a situation where we had to use the victims to help. He dropped the tagline to them. They pulled the main line across, and we started working the boat from there. So these are just a few dramatic parts of our successes, but let me go into what it takes to have a successful program and how we've been successful. And the very first one, I was talking on a panel a couple of weeks ago in San Francisco with Menlo Park Chief, and one of the things that he really pounded home, and I didn't realize, it actually took him, after all this time, to point out, and I've kind of heard it here and there, is he and I are unique. Some of y'all may have heard Barry Moore talk yesterday. His chief fully supports their program. It takes that mindset. It takes me as a chief to be decisive and go, we're going to do this. It's kind of bold that I say, we went to the council and told the council we were going to do this. That's really bold. I was lucky I had an interim city manager at the time who was equally as bold as I am. But I'm not saying you're just going to go, we're going to do what we want. It takes that chief to go, we're going to pursue this program, and we're going to do it right. We're going to do our research. We're going to research the equipment. As I said, I didn't just go buy that $200. I could have got it off the shelf right then and there and said, let's go. But I took the time to even research the equipment back there. We still research a lot. And then I went to the council. That was our first public announcement, was at the council meeting. But not a lot of people go to council meetings. We have to go beyond that. So we started a campaign with Garrett, Facebook. Every PR event, this was the biggest thing, every PR event we had in town, we sent Garrett to, and Garrett flew. Whether it was the YMCA doing a safety fair or something, we sent Garrett, and Garrett flew. Garrett let people see it. We had that Facebook and YouTube presence talking about what we were going to do. The last time, or the first time, I will say this, the first time your citizens find out about your UAS program does not need to be when it's 25 feet over some backyard with kids playing in it. That actually happened in our area, and after about a year or two of really good news stories and a lot of support by the media in our area, it took that one story, police department drone spying on somebody, to do a lot of damage. So at PR events, we do get the people, especially where we're at in Texas. I'll shoot you down, and Garrett's has been shot before. It survived. And we try, and I've said drone a little bit in here, but that's because, y'all are in the industry. When we're talking to civilians, we call it UAS. We don't use the word drone, because if I say drone, you're spying on me or you're going to shoot. Garrett likes to talk about Hellfire missiles being, and it sounds harsh, but I tell people all the time, I'm sorry, I have better things to do. You're not that interesting. And it's really not that easy, for me to get out there and spy on you. So, we kind of had to counter that a lot. Learn the rules. Comply with regulations. It's not know the rules. It's not, I read a little bit about the rules. Again, just like with the equipment, we research, we keep up with all of the rules. And I know you guys do, but for the enterprise dealers that are going to be talking to departments and helping them get their program, stress these things to them. Training, and more training. As a firefighter, that training has, in fact, we were talking the other day, my motto, long before we got into UAS, my personal motto as an instructor, fire instructor, and I've been a fire instructor for a majority of my career. Not just that, we were talking earlier, I teach at a there we go. I teach at a college. I'm an adjunct professor for a fire science program at a college. Training, my motto is training is the key to safety, and safety must rule our incidents. So we pride ourselves on the ability, and it sounds outlandish, but we can do it. We can be in the air from the time I put my vehicle in park. I can be in the air with my aircraft in a minute. Now, some people may think that's outlandish, but that's training. We train and we prepare. We have our equipment ready to go. We have pre-flight checks, but a majority of our pre-flight is done when we put it back in the vehicle. And I have mine in my vehicle. Garrett has a go box that he has. We train. And this is a really good one here. We've met departments that bought a UAS, and then a year later, we actually a couple of months ago ran into this. We met up with them a year later, and I'm like, hey, yeah, have y'all been using it? Oh, yeah, we had a training. We used it on a training, and then we had that one call we used it on. But, yeah, so we've been using it. That's a lot of money you invested. That's a huge tool. We actually have a neighboring department that I wear that assistant chief out all the time because we went through, we trained them. They've got a lot of great equipment, and they don't use it. Use it. It's a phenomenal tool for safety. And then the next one Garrett's going to start to talk about here, growing a regional response team. We started out really looking at us and our department. We, at the beginning, didn't think how far this was going to go. Never envisioned how big it would be in our area, and now it has grown by leaps and bounds.
So for a regional response team, kind of the way this came about is pretty much what Chief Baker started talking about, and you got to understand just a little bit of background. When we started flying these things in the fire department, Joshua Fire Department, word got out pretty quick, and there were times I was flying, and keep in mind this is a volunteer thing, but I was flying 8-10 times a day. Now, it wasn't for Joshua Fire at that time. It was the word got out that we had a UAS and we can get eyes in the sky quickly. So we were getting called out by every agency. Sometimes there's one even called us from 2-hour drive away. Hey, can you come out here? You know, and so we did. And Chief Baker and I started talking about it, and we said we've got to kind of work ourselves out of work here and get some of these other departments on board. And there's a lot more to that, but that happened. Well, from that came other departments coming on board, and we were training them, and they would, start flying, and pretty soon our workload started getting to where it's more the large stuff, our local stuff, and the large stuff. Well, the natural growth from that is, hey, look, we show up, we call each other out to help, but we should kind of formalize that and have it to where we're doing formal training as a team. We can combine resources and really work as a fully functional team. And that's what this public safety U.S. response team is. So it was established. It's actually really new overall as far as the formal organization. It is now recognized as both what they call council of government, so a regional asset, and after Harvey, a state. Texas recognizes as a response asset now. Some of the benefits or some of the things that you can do with this, of course, is it's a specialized mutual aid team. Multiple departments all combine their efforts to help each other out. And that one of the things that helps is that a department may invest in, M210, and one is great, but more is better, as it says up on the top. And this is where this whole thing, power in numbers, really comes from. Because if you can start filling the sky with these things, there's pretty much nothing you can do. And in fact, you have shared resources, large regional response, team training, specialized tactics, and here we get down to virtually indefinite air support. We're going to, in a minute I'll get to this, but one of the things that we've recently discovered is that our helicopter guys have almost been begging for work because they just don't call them out anymore. We can respond faster. We can provide better air support, continuous air support. In fact, The P-Cert allows nonstop air support. For those that were here yesterday talking to Barry Moore, there was a 6-hour, I thought it was 5, he said 6-hour SWAT standoff, and we were in the air nonstop. You couldn't do that with just one department unless you had a monster program with multiple pilots. But when you combine your resources, you can. And that also goes into, you can provide aerial information from every angle, whether that be fire or police or whatever. You can put multiple UAS up in the air, and you can provide that information back to command so that they can make better decisions from every angle possible. So we're going to get into a few operations. I know one of the things I'll say is, I know Chief Baker just showed a wildland fire in the Swiftwater. Last year, if you were here, I went through, and pretty much the whole presentation was on what we were doing in Joshua Fire and all the stuff we were doing. Obviously, this is focusing on more on, if your department is just getting started, you're already behind. Where everything is going now is UAS in swarm, if you will, multiple departments or multiple UAS, and you're going to see why, and that's where the technology is going. So here's some of the things that, this is the most, I'd say not necessarily the most recent, because we've been called on and stuff since this quite a bit, but this is the one that a lot of people know, that kind of kept track of what we do down in Hurricane Harvey. So the one on the, I'll just go to these 4 pictures real quick. I'm kind of stuck behind the podium, but the one on the bottom right, that was taken by Chief Baker and his Mavic. That was day 1. We get out there, and it was kind of bizarre. You didn't really see the flooding until you came over a hill, and then all of a sudden these nice neighborhoods were swamps. And the first thing that they were looking for is they could get high water vehicles and boats down these streets to look in the front yards, but nobody could look in the backyards. So Chief Baker, we started splitting up in teams from day 1, but this was taken by Chief Baker, and that's what he was actually doing, was search and rescue, looking for victims in their backyards or in places that you really couldn't see from the ground. We'll go up to the top left corner up there. So the second part of the second team went up there, and got to be honest here, I went down there, and my mindset was, we're going to do all this training stuff that we do, swiftwater rescue and delivering life preservers and rescue lines and blah, 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 and all this stuff. That's what I had in my mind going down. So when they split up the team and they said, okay, what's our task? Well, you guys are going to do levee inspections. What? Levee inspections, seriously? Turns out that was the most vital task of the entire operation. Once we got up in the air and realized that these little levees, and you can kind of see it there on the left, but these little levees that were made to just hold back little retention water from coming out of the neighborhood, the Brazos River had backed up to them, and they were holding back. It was probably overflown by maybe a mile or so of the whole Brazos River, and it was the only thing keeping other neighborhoods from flooding. So I'll say one big important thing on that, and this was the jaw dropper for Missouri City, who requested us to come down there, is they had what they call, I've never heard of this before, called levee attorneys down there, and they were flying in helicopters. It's expensive, yes, but they were flying in helicopters every 2 hours, flying over. And to what they could see in these manned helicopters, levees were great, holding sound, right? We flew down there, and on the very first trip, we were finding cracks and sloughs. So what you see here on the top left is one of the sloughs. You can see how it kind of sagged down, and those are sandbags that they had filled it in with later. Of course, this was a follow-up check, the next day, follow-up check to see how the patch job was performing. Up here on the top right, of course, that's the infamous M210. I will say that the M210 and the Mavic were the rock stars of that operation. And the reason that the M210 is because that thing can fly in ridiculous, and I mean ridiculous, winds. It laughs at 30-mile-an-hour winds, guys. And I know, hey, I'm not DJI. I can tell you what we've actually flown it in. I think they say 25 or 27-mile-an-hour winds or whatever they say on their specs. That thing laughed at 30-mile-an-hour hurricane winds down there, and it flew straight lines in those kind of winds. So this is the M210 anyway. We flew that down on Hurricane Harvey, and it did a really good job. And down on the bottom left there, that's Chris, one of our P-Cert members with Irving Police Department. Down the bottom left, though, that's Chris. Now, he's holding the Mavic in his hand. There were times where there was no LZ. It was just all water. And so I don't know about you guys. I'm not hand launching an M210. That's a good way to lose a few digits. But we would hand launch and hand catch the Mavic, and that was our best option at the time, and it performed really well.
He's actually standing on a dump truck.
Yeah,
that's how they got in and out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The guy taking the picture sitting down in the dump truck, and he's standing up on the edge, and he had just caught the Mavic. So, okay. So Hurricane Harvey. This one, for those that were at Barry Moore's presentation yesterday, he had some of these in there. Quickly, too, on the left, kind of show you some of the information we were able to provide back to Incident Command. The one on the right over here, the large one, I want to kind of talk about that for just a brief minute. We were in a TFR. I know you're like, yeah, Garrett, that's not 400 and under. And you'd be right, right? That's over 1,000 feet in the air. We were in a TFR, meaning that the airspace was controlled completely by the emergency response coordinators. Even Care Flight had to ask permission, if necessary, to come into that TFR. So we had total authority and authorization to fly up to that altitude. So we do a lot of search and rescues, obviously, as well. What I want to point out here, this is, some of you may have heard about that 2-year-old. It was kind of a weird, miraculous deal. Unfortunately, Dad fell out the back of the boat and got his head injured on the prop. But the boat that's over there on the right up against the tree, the 2-year-old was able to stay in it. It went up on the shore. He flipped out, and he stayed the night out there with the hogs and coyotes. He was found the next day. We were out there searching, and what I want to point out here on the left is, see those bright yellow spots? I don't know how many of you are familiar with the XT, and for those that are familiar with it, how good you are with it, but if you learn how to use the XT properly, there's a piece of technology in there called isotherm, and when you turn it on and have your settings properly, that's how bright a person stands out. And whether they're in the woods, see they're yellow on the left, the two searchers, whether they're in the woods or whether they're out in the open, that's how easy it is to find somebody. So this is that SWAT standoff. I'm going to go into just a brief description of our tactics here that we do. I'm not going to obviously get into SWAT tactics, but UAS tactics. This is a SWAT standoff. This is the one that Barry was talking about yesterday. This is a 5 or 6 hour SWAT standoff. Okay. Now, what I want to point out here, in this one, again, we provided this, we streamed this imagery back to both the police chief and the SWAT commander who was on scene. We were over in a UAS command location. They were over there closer to where if bullets started flying, that's where they would be. And of course, the chief, he was off further, probably in an air-conditioned environment somewhere. But what I want to show here, yes, you can see the MRAP down on the bottom. But what you can see here is a helicopter. This was what was realized in part of the debrief. A helicopter circles for an hour and a half and then goes back and refuels and then comes in circles. So at any given time, they're only seeing maximum 2 sides of that building, right? Now, if he were to make and by the way, this guy did try to make a run for it a couple times, but if he were to try to make a run for it and the helicopters were on the other side, they could miss it. So what we did, in this case, we had 2 Inspire 1s. We had multiple Inspire 1s, but we always had 2, and we would rotate them as one needed to come in for a battery. The other one would go up and replace it. But you can see on this picture on the right, you can see both sides, the back of the house and this side of the house with the air conditioner on it. And the one on the front, they were watching both the front and that side over there on the right. So you'd be able to see if he tried to come out of either one. Now, the other piece of equipment we used on this operation was the Mavic. And the Mavic, this was pretty cool. It put a big smile on my face, and I still kind of smile about it, is they really want to know, were the kids okay? So this guy had barricaded himself in there, and he had made bad threats that he was going to injure children and et cetera, right? But they take the Mavic, we take the Mavic, our team does. So we've got this aerial perspective. They really want to know, are the kids okay? We start flying the Mavic up real close to the windows, like you were just seeing. And sure enough, one of the kids, I guess from the noise or whatever it is, opens up the blinds and peeks out the window. They instantly know, okay, kid's safe, right? So things can be calmed down a little bit. He hasn't injured the kids. So this was a really, really interesting one. But the most interesting thing about this operation was the duration that the team was able to sustain where your single fire or police department could not.
I'm going to get a little bit off the PCERT team theme for a second because I want to talk about law enforcement uses. In emergency management, I'm an emergency management coordinator. In emergency management, I've had some emergency manager friends that when I talk about this technology with them, first words out of their mouth is, I don't want that liability. Well, I put firefighters in a 70,000-pound vehicle, send them down the road at 60 miles an hour. If I worried about liability, I would never respond to a call. I've got liability from the minute I wake up. Actually, during sleep, I've got liability as a fire chief with everybody I'm responsible for. So liability, I have to go to the Tulsa incident where a female officer shot and killed a male suspect. And one of the things in that, when you compare it with UAS technology, they had a helicopter. The helicopter was having to orbit, for a number of reasons, safety included. The helicopter is orbiting. At the point she fired her round, the vehicle was between her and where she and the other officers were and where the deceased is. So their perspective was blocked by the vehicle. And they're higher up in altitude trying to get all of that in. Second thing is, that was all being recorded. Their voice interaction, the pilot, co-pilot, was all being recorded. And there was two things that they said. Looks like he's about to get shot. Second was, that's a bad dude. And that phrase, he said that, and that was what was latched onto by the media and went viral. Now, I'm not speaking to anything other than those are the facts. UAS is an impartial witness, can get down closer. It's a better view than even the body cameras are going to be. So what I pose is it's actually liability reduction. It's a more impartial witness, better view, better quality. It can stay stationary and get a better perspective than maybe what else even body cameras have. And real quick, one other thing, I can just, because it's so in our most recent memory, there's two incidents where I feel like, again, it would have saved officers' lives or even civilian lives. We had the Dallas police incident where after a rally, we had an active shooter that shot and killed 5 police officers. Even something as simple as a Mavic could have been a distractor, saved officers' lives, saved, in that incident, civilians weren't the target, but let's take the MGM incident in Vegas. You could have flown a Mavic. You could have probably, with a thermal, found the shooter quicker. That was one of the issues they had. They didn't know where he was firing from. Probably could have found it with an XT, found the muzzle flashes sooner, and found him sooner. And then also flown even a Mavic into the window and been a distractor. And someone challenged me, well, what if he shoots it down? Good. It's one less round he's putting into a civilian. That few seconds or even 30 seconds or a minute that you're a distraction, that's more civilians that got away. That's more time for the tactical team to get in place. And then lastly, I will just say it may be the point in the decision-making of that active shooter to end their life. That's a lot of times when they figure, okay, the gig is up, they've got me, that's when they end their life. And that may cause that right there with a Mavic or something flying up on them. So I just want to interject those because it's a little bit outside of our team theme we've got going on right now, but it's really important because we are flying these indoors on tactical incidents and training for that. Again, it's a huge safety tool. So sorry, I just wanted to get that in there.
Thank you. So the next slide, we get asked a lot. Okay, so you guys do this day in, day out, all the time. You've got the experience, so help us out here. What do you use? What equipment do you actually use in the response team? And this is it. We use the Inspire 1, the Mavic, the M600, and now the M210. I think we have 5 of them on the team now. So the first one is the Inspire 1. Now I'll say the Inspire 1 has been one heck of a workhorse. Pretty much everybody has one of these, is getting one of these, or has been trying to get one of these in their department in our area. The Inspire 1, and since we have been flying it since, what I guess it'd be early 2015, we were one of the first ones to have one. We have only had one issue with any of our UAS at all, and that was just one battery failure. But other than that, this equipment has been absolutely outstanding. And the reason the Inspire 1 is so appealing is A, because of price. You know, it kind of hits that price point that most departments can afford, the vast majority of them. B, its capabilities. It's very versatile. You can put a thermal camera on it. You can put have your regular optics. And there's even a bunch of attachments like the Stork system and stuff for doing aerial deliveries. Of course, your training adds onto it and how to use it. But overall, this guy has been the absolute go-to workhorse for most of the departments, and from my understanding, actually most of them in the world. The Mavic Pro. So the Mavic Pro is interesting. I love testing. I'm a beta tester for DJI, and one of the things that I asked them to do is, even if it's not an enterprise product, this was designed to come out as some family photography, go to the beach kind of thing. I got my hands on one of them, and that's all I planned on using it for. I took it to P-Cert P-Cert training, and we said, well, how's that fly inside? Pretty soon we realized you can fly that thing through an entire cinder block construction school building, and you still get an HD signal out when you're ducked behind a Tahoe. We were like, what? So all of a sudden, this thing had huge applications, right? The other thing that this thing, the Mavic Pro, is good for is a backup. Your Inspire 1, you break a blade, you do whatever reason you ground your Inspire 1, you can put this up in the air. Yes, sir. All right, so the next one, we honestly don't use this one that much. When we use it, it's either something really huge or we're doing a search where we just need the extended flight times. This one's kind of the Chinook. In fact, ours has a call sign called bellhop. You know, it carries our luggage, right? But this one, you can use it. You can equip this one and use it. It's made to pick up heavier payloads, designed for it. And you can pick up axes and chainsaws and SCB air tanks and stuff like that to firefighters on rooftops or in remote locations. And you got to think about it. Right now, you use personnel to do that. You know, why? They're trained firefighters. Let the machine carry the payload and let your firefighters fight fires, right? SCBA air tank. This is when we were testing it. This is our fire department.
Now, mind you, I'm in a meeting in our conference room with our officers, and in a meeting room, and I don't know this is going on until I see this go fly by the window. So for all the firefighters in here, this is one of our pilots as well, and he's a lieutenant, but he has no helmet on. So we step outside because one of my other questions was, please tell me that's not a full cylinder. I don't want it falling out, hitting the ground, and rocketing off.
So one of the things that you'll notice as this is coming up, one of the things I want you to notice is one of the things we are worried about is how will the flight controller respond when it loses that payload quickly. So watch when this firefighter pulls this thing out, it doesn't try to pull him up in the sky or anything like that. He was able to just pull it out. The flight controller responded quickly, gave me a thumbs up, and I was able to go back. And we looked at the battery on that and what we could do. You could on a set of batteries, you could transport approximately 7 of those. So really what you would do in a real situation is transport a fresh air tank maybe to a rooftop. They'd pull the old one out, put the fresh one out, put the empty one in, and it's replaying to see. And then you'd return and keep doing it again on a set of batteries. All right? So now comes the M210. This is the latest UAS that we're using. We have been looking forward to this one for a very long time. And this was really the one that was designed partially and significantly for public safety from the ground up. See, one of the things you got to realize is until now, all of these have been repurposed. You know, the Inspire 1 was for cinematography and photography. We repurposed it. Mavic, obviously, and so on and so forth. This one is built for us. And one of the nice things about it, again, we've lost one in the past, since 2014, and it's due to a battery. Now we have redundant batteries, but on top of that, we have all-weather operations, high winds, dual gimbals, expansion, power, and data ports, designed to be the new workhorse. So eventually, yes, this one will replace the Inspire one in the departments as they get the funding for them. And big key on the M210 that I want everybody to understand is, as awesome as it is right now, we're just getting started. There's so much more capability that the options, the dual gimbals and the ports and everything on the M210, they bring so much more to the table. And I'm gonna here in just a little bit, I'll give you just a little glimpse into that. So I'm going to step away from the aircraft for just a second. I want to highlight two sensors, and two of them that are just have that wow factor, and we use a lot. The first one is the XT, and we use that a lot. I'm going to let Chief Baker speak to that thermal image, because that has a lot of significance for all you firefighters in the room.
So we as a firefighter never want fire above us, behind us, or below us. So when some departments still commit firefighters to the roof to make a ventilation hole. In this case, when I arrived, I had fire. I was in command. I was first on. I had a fire on the back porch that was extending. It was not inside the house, but it had extended up through the eave and was running through the attic. So you can see the huge heat signature we have there. Engine crews started arriving. I ordered one to attack here, and one to go to the roof and cut a ventilation hole, get that heat out of that attic. At the same time, they're setting the ladder right here to go up. Garrett arrives and says, "What do you want?" And that's code for how do I want him to fly, with standard camera, thermal, or whatever. We didn't have the M210 at the time. So I told him I need thermal on the roof. And this is why. I can see the roof integrity, because I can see all through that heat transference. I can see all of the rafters in the roof. The other part is now, we have to use a lot of educated guesswork, training, and just experience to figure out where the best place to put that hole is. Now I knew exactly where I needed that hole and could relay that to the crews. I know the roof is safe. I know where to put them up there. They can get up, cut the hole, get off the roof. We don't admire our handiwork. We get back down. And then afterwards, finding any hot spots later on down here. So this was really huge when we got the XT camera to be able to, again, firefighter safety. We can also, I'll just say one other thing, we can also see, we have a term that called flow path, and I can see that flow path through the building. I can see as the fire is progressing through the building where it's about to be, where it's going. Basically chasing the smoke. And when we got out there, I stood next to the incident commander. He saw that. He said what he needed to say over the radio. Now watch what happens to the red as he paints it with water. Our standard practice when it gets to the way it works is when we're doing what we call overhaul on this is a house that went to the ground. So we got a pile of ash, and we're looking for smoke coming up out of that pile, and that's where we spray water. Well, what's smoldering may be over here, and that's just where the smoke's coming out. So by being able to know exactly where to put the water, that has reduced our on-scene times by our crews tremendously on a fire. Now we can get back in service sooner. So the last DJI sensor that I want to kind of highlight here is the Z30. Now it's still kind of new in our area. The firefighters, they like it, but the police absolutely love it. I'm going to show you just a quick video snippet of a lot longer video. This was for looking for a stolen vehicle. This is by what they call a Tri-County Task Force, Auto Theft Task Force, and so I'm going to show you why they absolutely love the Z30s. So they're looking for a specific vehicle, but normally they would have to go kick in doors and go and look at this stuff, because otherwise they couldn't get on the property. This keeps the police officers safer. They didn't even have to go on the property to determine whether or not the physical contact risk was there.
And by the way, we're flying about a little over a mile away. We're sitting there in a parking lot.
At other points, they were looking at VIN numbers, yes.
We were able to get some VIN numbers that day. If the windshield's not too dirty and stuff and you get over it and you get the sun out of it, you can actually read the VIN number, yes. All right. So now I'm going to talk about, real quickly, I see you smiling back there, Minxie. I love this too, right? This is not a DJI product, but what I'm doing here is identifying the M210. I'm identifying needs. And what I really want to highlight here is everybody so far tends to think, okay, well, what camera are they going to put on the M210 next? Why limit yourself to a camera, all right? Let me explain something. One of the challenges we have is right now we're better than helicopters because helicopters, when they're talking about it, it's some guy that doesn't work on your team up there trying to take a visual observation and relay it into a verbal communication to some guys on the ground. Well, we're one step better than that now in that now the incident commander, who is part of the team, can communicate to the guy on the ground, right? But there's still that missing piece. So if you're that firefighter and you're looking for the hot spot, but you can't see it with your eyes, or you're that police officer and hey, he's in that row of bushes somewhere. He's got a knife. Great. Which one? I'm not going in there, you know. If we put something like this on the M210 on the secondary gimbal, right? And we have that synchronization capabilities, now we can exactly identify where we are looking to the guys on the ground. Put that laser on a hot spot and say, spray here, whoop, and you watch it go away, right? Put that laser on that bush and say, there's where he's at. You're communicating directly from the UAS to the ground, okay? And so this is just kind of a highlight. I don't know where this will go. This one I made for myself. I made it, again, I'm an aerospace engineer, so I do geeky things, right? And I made this, and we're going to be using this probably a lot. But the main key of this thing is there's a lot more to it. Lights, lasers, all kinds of different things that you can put on that secondary gimbal. So it's time to start really innovating with what we can do and with all those power ports. All right. Real quickly here, so the benefits to a regional response team. Combined equipment, it's a force multiplier. Equipment availability to small departments. If your department is a real small one, you can only afford a Mavic, well, guess what? You can call on your buddies that have M210s and stuff like that. Team training, that's huge. Knowledge sharing, so one department goes out to the incident, we go to our training, hey, by necessity, I had to come up with this tactic, I want to share it with the team. Now everybody knows it. Allows for nonstop air support, we already covered that. Multiple perspective observation, and we showed that in that SWAT scenario. That could also be a wildland fire. Establishes team roles and operations, so everybody knows when they go on what you're doing. I may be swapping batteries, I may be a pilot, I may be air boss. It just whatever the team needs whenever we show up there, but all the needs are fulfilled. Embedded team member with command ops so that you can get things done quicker through command, even if it's at the state level. And have a regional and state recognized asset, which therefore can also eventually lead into grants and stuff like that. And I'm going to turn it over now to Chief Baker to kind of.
So I'm going to try and get through real quick here. So that's all the benefits to our team. And again, we started small, and now we've got this huge team concept. We actually span about six counties, 14, 15 departments, and growing. But the challenges that come with that. The challenges are traffic control for us, not just, I'm not talking us integrated into, national airspace. I'm talking, we get 3 or 4 or more UAS in the air. Now we're coordinating that, and that's a huge challenge. Incident command lacks that situational understanding, that control of the air operations, so we need to get that control. How do we live stream it back? For us, the best way we've been able to do it that works the best has been live streaming through YouTube. There's got to be a better way for a number of reasons, security being one of them. And then also speed, because we're having to text out a link sometimes. We go to someone we've never been to. We've got to text a link to that incident commander, and it's a big challenge. It's slow, all of that. And then it's also cumbersome trying to maintain those YouTube stream pages, and sometimes we've got to get rid of some of those videos that are on there. So there's a lot of challenges there that we've been trying to overcome for a while. So Flight Hub, that's going to be the answer to we're looking for a lot of the issues. You know, we're going to have more networked operations. So having more aircraft in the air, we're going to be able to have more command and control over them. That force integration, when we're bringing even outside of our team, we may be with a department that they have a UAS program, but the incident's gone beyond their program capabilities, and they bring us in. Or we go to Hurricane Harvey where there is no operational assets as far as UAS, but we're tying in with the fire department there, police department there that we've never worked with before. An expanded common operating picture so that everybody gets a better view of what is happening at the incident and the decisions being made and why. Enhanced command and control, again, not just of the aircraft, but of the incident itself. Where do I deploy units? Where's the best place to deploy them to and from? Where are they most needed? Tornado strike is one of those. You know, we want to get down to where the possibly trapped and seriously injured are, but a lot of times we bog down with the walking wounded. So it's, again, we're looking for that ultimate solution for managing our operations. You know, giving us that air traffic and operational awareness, knowing where our UAS are operating in a larger incident. Live streaming capability is great. It's not that I, as the chief, sitting in my natural habitat that's air conditioned, climate controlled, at a desk. Those are all important things to me. But you know, I may have more than one incident going on. I may be working a house fire and I have another major incident going on. If I can tap into that live stream and see, okay, or I'm in a meeting, that happens more often than not. I can tap into that live stream and go, okay, this incident is expanding. They're going to need me there probably pretty soon. I might as well just go ahead and get going. And there's some other things there with that live streaming is important for. Flight records, it's huge. You know, there's a lot of good apps and programs out there. Getting it all consolidated is huge, and we're really looking forward to the help this will provide. Secure data. Really more so on law enforcement side. It's not that I don't think about data security. It's not as high a priority for me as it is for law enforcement side. So now, you know, it's a secure cloud access. We've had some issues recently. Barry didn't really touch on them with freedom of information requests for their data, their information. You know, we're able to keep that more secure to where we can access it a little easier there.